Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first in our virtual series, The Art and Science of Practical Management, Core Skills for Leadership and Management, given to us by Professor Joe Martin, the Royal College of Pathologists President. My name is Dr. Matthew Clark. I am a neuropathology registrar and also the chair of the Trainee Advisory Committee for the Royal College of Pathologists. And it's my pleasure to be chairing this and the subsequent sessions in this virtual series tonight. This just to give you a bit of information about the series. It's been designed by Joe and is an 8-week program and it's open to anybody who's interested in learning some skills and tips about how to manage some quite complex and difficult situations which we may find ourselves in as trainees and even as consultants as well. So a really useful case-based discussion and drawing on some reflective experience as well, looking at both the practical and theoretical aspects of leadership and management in healthcare. Just some the format of the evening, it will take place at 7 o'clock each week, and we'll start with a presentation of about 15 to 20 minutes length given by Joe, and then this will be followed by a Q&A session which will be chaired by myself. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We have switched all audio off and your videos off as well, just to help with connectivity and ensure the efficiency of the evening and we keep to time. But also, if you would like to ask a question at the end, and we would welcome any questions, Joe is very happy to answer any questions. You will see at the bottom there is a Q&A tab. So please use this. Don't use the chat function, it's the Q&A tab. And everybody can see any questions that are written in there. And if you like the look of one and particularly want to hear the answer to that from Joe, then you can actually click on the thumbs up sign, and this will help us to know which ones are the most popular questions, just in case we get a lot of them coming through. So if you'd like to ask a question, please do so throughout the talk that Joe gives tonight. Now, just to introduce Jo herself, she's extremely well versed in leadership and management skills, and she's got an extensive research experience. She's got over 130 research publications in some of the top journals. She's also a professor of pathology at Queen Mary University in London, and her clinical background and clinical specialty is actually gastrointestinal motility disorders. But her leadership experience is very extensive. She's been a medical director, a chief medical officer, a director of academic health services, and also the national clinical director of pathology for NHS England, as well as being the current president of the Royal College of Pathologists and also the vice chair of the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges. So we are very privileged to have her talking to us tonight about her experiences of leadership and management. And it's my pleasure to hand over to Jo now for her first session, the role and the objectives, why and why bother. Thank you very much, Jo.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and thank you all for turning up and having a listen. So I'm going to share some slides with you. I'm going to cover 3 particular areas as we go, and I'm going to cover something around leadership role and what your natural style is, objectives in your role, and why on earth would you do this in the first place. So often when you talk about leadership, you talk about great people, you talk about transformational leadership, people who inspire you. To be absolutely honest, when I think about Martin Luther King, when I think about Mother Teresa, when I think about Mahatma Gandhi, I get really depressed. You know, I'm not them. Very few of us are. And there are role theories that mirror on the great person. And undoubtedly, there are amazingly great people, great leaders around who have vision and passion and can achieve absolutely astonishing things. There are other theories, however, that say we're all born with traits and some of us just can't cut it. So luckily, there are models. This is the NHS leadership model that suggests that there are areas where we might have skills that we can develop, that there are particular areas that we can think of, particularly in relation to leading in healthcare. So leading with care, that's around being kind to people, leading with sharing the vision. That's around what do we want to achieve, engaging the team. There's no point in you being a fantastic leader if nobody else is coming with you. Influencing for results. So how do you get what you want to achieve? Evaluating information, that's data, that's thinking about how you use information to know where you are and where you're going. Shared purpose, inspiring shared purpose. So we're all here for patients in the health service. We are here for patients. It's easier to inspire shared purpose in that context. Look at what's happened during COVID. We've done enormous amounts all together. Holding to account, that's a tricky one, and we're going to cover that in another session, particularly connecting our services together and developing capabilities, thinking about not just your own capability and what you can do and what you can't do, but also others, how you can help develop others. So lots of models around, lots of roles around, lots of theories around. One of the key things is situational leadership. So the idea that the best action of a leader depends on a range of situational factors. In a trauma call, you don't say, oh, I think we should have a workshop. Let's describe the user journey. You've got to have somebody in charge so that the team knows exactly who's doing what's happening next. Very, very, very good and clear communication. Absolutely, allow you to flag problems, but it's flagged to a leader who then will decide what to do. And that's a senior leader who will make the call. The other developing capabilities, the other inspiring common purpose is taken for granted in that situation. So situational leadership is what is required. I've known some absolutely fantastic trauma call leaders who you probably wouldn't want in your organization in any other situation because they were just domineering and not great communicators, other than in a raised voice and in a taking charge situation. Very good in that setting, not good elsewhere. And that plays to contingency leadership. So the contingency theory basically says there's no single best style. This photograph always makes me laugh. You've got 4 people all completely PPE'd up and somebody in shorts. It's not he's not in sync with his team. His casual style of leadership, his generic laissez-faire approach is not one that's in sync with the rest of the team. And the contingency approach is that you need to be adaptive. You need to adapt your leadership style to the circumstances. Or you say, actually, to be absolutely frank, I'm not the best person to do this. I need to work with people who are better at doing things. And there is a real thing about leadership around choosing people around you, choosing people in your team who complement the things that you can't do very well. So I know that I work very, very well with people who are very good with data, who are good at presenting it, who are good at completer finishing, good at checking what I do. I work very, very well with people who are very competent with commissioning skills, and I need that around me to be most effective. I need people who I work with who've got a completely different skill set, and you use that to your best advantage. Don't just choose mini me's around you, because you'll end up with a team of few talents. Make best use of those around you. Encourage people with different views. The one that I rather like, because it sort of ties everything together and gives me hope. It doesn't give me hope that I'm going to turn into Mother Teresa, other than in the sort of physical sense I might get a bit old and wrinkly. But in terms of behavioural theories, the theory that leaders can be made, they can develop, you can define and learn certain behaviours. I've put this picture up of King George V, and some of you may have seen the film The King's Speech. And King George was V was a second son who never expected to become king. He had a stammer, and radio was just coming on, and the Second World War was just about to start. And he learnt skills, he overcame particular problems, and became an established and respected leader. So certain elements of leadership can be learned. You learn often from your mistakes. Some of my absolutely appalling mistakes of which I'm ashamed, I try not to repeat. Some skills I came to very, very late on. So I did an exercise on a leadership course where you listen. And I know that sounds a bit odd, but if you spend 30 seconds listening to somebody talk, and then you attentively, and then you then spend 30 seconds not paying attention to them while they talk, and then you have it done to you, it's got a profound impact on how it makes you feel if you talk to someone who just is not paying attention or listening. And that simple exercise taught me, and in a very direct way, that I was probably multitasking while people were talking. People in my team were coming to tell me stuff, and you sort of take it on very quickly, and you understand, what they mean and what they want to say. But I wasn't really listening to them in an engaged and attentive way. And that attention when somebody is speaking to you is some of the most valuable things you can give them. And I learnt also some coaching skills, and actually asking people questions rather than telling them the answers in a more mentor approach was something I came to rather late, and it's something that I have very much valued. So there are things that you can learn, and there are things that you can develop. And I've highlighted some of those here in relation to that NHS leadership frame again. And you can see stakeholder work that helps you make your connections with other organisations, with other people who have an interest. The coaching I've mentioned. In terms of holding people to account, courage and process awareness. I know process is often a dirty word, but if you get an HR process correct, it saves an enormous amount of problems later on. In terms of evaluating information, data skills, we're going to come on to some of the skills that I have found useful and I would commend to you in later talks. Participation, engaging the team. Do you have a directive style? Are you saying it's a transactional leadership style? Are you saying, I will tell you off if you don't do this, or you will get paid more if you do this? There are certain settings in which a transactional style of engagement works. So the GP contract is often quoted as an example of that. If you want everybody's blood pressure measured in primary care, then incentivize it through payment. And that does work. But a participatory style, when you get more collaboration, when people you work with buy into what you're doing, they collaborate with you in a more participatory rather than transactional style, makes everybody happier, and it shares that common purpose better. Similarly, influencing, understanding your objectives, understanding your networks, where you're working is very key. So objectives, why have I talked about objectives? So very few of us go into a role, even if we've got a job description, with a very clear idea of what the objectives of your organisation are. Except in in commercial organisations, they're often very much clearer. You know, we aim to achieve sales of 3 million. We aim to, you know, achieve a particular market share. But particularly in the health services, our objectives, you know, we don't want to damage our patients. We want to keep patients safe. But actually, the only legal requirement for most trusts is actually to break even. I know that sounds weird, but that's actually true. But what is expected of your organisation externally? We all report to someone, the Queen, with the notable exception of the Queen, but we are all held to account in some way. So I'm held to account in my role as president by the members. They expect me to do particular odds and ends. We talk with the trustee board about setting objectives for the college. In the health service, go and have a look at the objectives of the trust at the trust board meetings. You may work in a private sector organisation. Ask about the objectives. What are they trying to achieve? It helps contextualise what you're doing a lot more easily. The other thing, I asked my son, you know, what's the one thing you've learned on the graduate training programme at BT? And he said, ask your boss exactly what they want and in how much detail. So you can have a mismatch between what you are expecting from others or others are expecting from you. So try and define that, try and understand whether they want detail, whether they want high level, whether they just want you to get on and report a pile of slides, or whether they want you to get on and report a pile of slides and make sure that the turnaround time is quicker. So understanding what the objectives are and how they fit in. The other element is, how do you fit in and why are you doing it? What's your motivation for doing the job? Now, motivators are generally done into two categories. So it's hygiene factors. That's not in the soap and shower gel sense, but it's more work-life balance, money, job security, how long's the commute, are your colleagues nice to you, physical location. So basically stuff that will either make a job acceptable or make a job unacceptable. But then there's those other stuff. It's the other stuff around motivators. Why am I doing this job? It's a challenge. Is it because, you know, I want recognition? Am I going to, you know, am I going to, you know, be Minister of State for Health, or am I going to be a member of Parliament? Am I going to have more influence? Why do I want that influence? So I've done several jobs because I want to make change, and it's only through becoming a clinical lead or becoming a clinical director, or in some cases working at a national level, that I've been able to influence change that I want to see. Is it because your organisation's got meaningful goals? Is it because you think it's important to the organisation that you're doing it? Is it alignment with your values? You know, I work in the health service. I want to make things better. That's my personal driver, is to make things better. I like seeing things made better. I like clearing out cupboards at home. I like, you know, making my husband happy with a nice meal. But at work, I want to try to ensure that patients are better off, patients are safer, they get the diagnostics tests that they really need, and that we've got a really good workforce flow coming through. So that's my personal thing. The other thing is personal development. What are you getting from that role? Are you learning skills? Are you being stretched? Are you being exposed to more experience across a wider range of challenges? Are you learning about finance? Are you learning about commissioning? Are you learning about things that will make you more able to do a broader job or a broader role, to understand things at a better level. If I understand the commissioning and I understand the objectives, you know, and those are lined up, then I'm much more able to make a difference. If I try and change the world, if I want to implement an incredibly expensive IT system at the current time, when we've got financial restraints and the IT people are all busy connecting up to the COVID hubs and point of care machines and implementing new Microsoft systems to try and stop us all being hacked, then I'm banging my head against a wall. So aligning my expectations and my objectives with what can be achieved. I'm not saying don't shoot high. I'm talking be realistic as you do that. Work towards it and do it in steps and over time if necessary. But align those goals and where possible with your organisation's objectives. Don't be afraid of disruptive change, but don't be unrealistic. The other thing is all things come, not necessarily to those who wait, but all things come to an end. Every role comes to an end. My tenure as president comes to an end in November, and every single role comes to an end. A consultant job, a clinical director role, a board job, a medical director role, a national clinical director role, they all come to an end. So we're all biodegradable in that sense. So be prepared for it. Don't be upset by it. A lot of chief execs in healthcare organisations will be removed, and it may be it's not personal, it's business. So I'm going to leave you on the thought that all things come to an end. With this is now the end of this particular session, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Jo. That was a really interesting talk, and particularly about the objectives and things, because I think we're often, I guess, in leadership roles, I certainly think about my own experience, you go in with your own agendas and often forget about the other objectives of what you're going into really are. So that was a really interesting point that you made. I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. I think we've already had one come through, Jo, if that's okay. So we've got, how do we assess in retrospect whether leadership was good or not? Whether it was the right or optimal style or approach?
Yes, I've just been told off about George VI rather than George V. Apologies. Yeah, that's right. Always admit that you're wrong and take it on the chin. Don't argue. It's everybody else is brighter than you are. So that's one. So how do you know whether leadership's been good? So I would say impact. Have you made a difference? Sometimes it's not possible to make massive difference in a positive direction. Sometimes it's good leadership involves not making it worse. Good leadership for me is being able to say, actually, yes, that's a good outcome. For me, good leadership is, have you made a positive difference? I don't think it's possible to keep everyone happy the whole time. And leadership can sometimes be making a hard decision that has caused some grumpiness. Now, some of you may know that I initiated a process in response to a complaint or series of complaints that caused a lot of grief with colleagues. But it was the right thing to do. It didn't make everyone happy. It made a lot of people were happy to see that. But leadership is not always making people happy. So good leadership is not, everything in the garden is fantastic and we all love you. It's not that simple. Everyone will have leadership often comes in Gothic lettering, leadership and management. It can be perceived as a mixed blessing, and you need to be prepared for that. But again, hold true to what you think is right and try and do your best.
I think that's a very good point, Joe. And you, like you say, you can't please everybody, and there are some things that you can't do much about as well. And I think that's
Yeah,
something I've always struggled with. No matter how hard you try and how much
yeah,
effort, you
yeah,
have nothing to show for it, and that's a very frustrating thing as a
yeah.
leader to come to terms with, I think.
Yeah, I mean, most people are pretty reasonable, and they will say, and you can, and if particularly with patients, sometimes it's, I'm really sorry, it shouldn't have happened. There's nothing I can do to put this right.
Mm, mm,
You know, and we will do everything we can to not let it happen again, but just acknowledging that actually we can't do anything about it. And people are not stupid either, so don't never fib to them.
no.
No,
Mm.
never.
We've got quite a few questions come through now,
We have,
Joe. So I've got one at the top here. What achievement in a leadership capacity are you most proud of?
if I'm absolutely honest, and I know it's cheesy, actually representing colleagues. I've had the enormous privilege of meeting colleagues and reveling in the brilliance of pathologists across all our 17 disciplines. I never fail to be astonished at what they do and how brilliant they are at it. And I think that's what I'm most proud of, is being able to tell people about how fantastic pathologists are, really.
Mm.
Um, which is not something, a personal thing, but it's a privilege. Yes, so that's for me.
Thanks, Joe. I've got another one here. How do you achieve a balance between being self-critical and having confidence to get on?
Really hard, really hard. So I've got massive imposter syndrome,
Mm.
huge. If you do the how impostery are you, I come way off the charts.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think you can. I don't think you can let it interfere. You have to have a degree of confidence, but you have to have a degree of self-reflection as well.
Mm.
Um, Realistic. I don't think you should. Occasionally when you mess up and it's just awful, it can paralyze you. And I think none of us in healthcare get away with making no mistakes.
Yeah.
I think you have to be able to move on from those. So you have to be self-reflective and sometimes just say sorry.
Yeah, exactly, Joe. Be honest about those mistakes. They happen to everybody. We're all human and things, but being honest is the best approach with them, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've also got another one. How much do you think you can change your natural style?
Okay. So if we go out to supper and I'm in scruff order and I go upstairs, I say to my husband, I'm going to change. And then he shakes his head and said, you'll never change. Uh, it's a sort of standing joke with us. I think you can adapt natural style. I think you've probably got the sense that I'm fairly open. I'm happy to talk about friends, family. I'm not in a personal way, but I will lay it bare. I'll tell people when I've messed up. I can be very well behaved. I can be very corporate. I can be very, and I can be a bit scary sometimes if I'm upset about something on a patient's behalf. So I think you can modify it. I think you can trim off your worst excesses. You can try, by being aware, not to collapse with laughter when somebody says something in an Academy of Medical Royal Colleges meeting that makes you laugh. You can take a breath. So you can modify your style. But the other thing is, people know when you're faking it.
Mm.
So you have to be natural, you have to be authentic. But equally so, there are times when you have to be well behaved.
Thanks, Joe. And I think we'll have just one more question, if that's okay. How do you approach working with other leaders, especially if above you, whose leadership style does not align with your own?
Yeah, that's really hard. So if you have I've been very fortunate in working with people who I have a huge respect for. There was one particular very senior person who I really didn't think I could work with. So the first time they asked me to take on a particular role, and it was a very senior role in the organisation, the whole conversation took 8 minutes. The whole thing. Then that included going into the office, taking off my coat, having a cup of tea. He said, I want you to do this, okay, and that was it.
Wow.
Very short on recognisable social skills, known throughout the organisation for it, and I didn't think I could work with them. He had an emergency coaching session. I asked one of the O&D department to give me a session because I really didn't think I could work with them. And so I got some tips and tricks about how to handle it. I think if the values clash is bad, I think if you've got a bully, then it's hard to call out, but I think you have to say something. And I think you have to say, actually, you know, when you raise your voice, I'm sure you don't intend it, but it makes me feel as though you're being aggressive. I'm sure you don't intend it. So learning some ways of challenging is difficult. Sometimes it's really hard.
I think that's a good point, Joe, because I think some people don't have an insight that maybe how they come across, and I think that is really important. So perhaps maybe it might make them take a step back and actually think about that in future, really. But you have to say something in order to make that change, don't you?
Yeah, it's very hard, and sometimes they'll, you know, I have had, and I should care about that. Why? It's like, okay, yeah, you know, and well, that's not my problem. That's the other one. It's actually, well, it is a problem.
I think we've got time for a couple more questions, if that's okay, Joe. Can you be a leader and still be friends with everyone at the end?
No. I think leadership, depending on the setting, will set you apart to a degree. So in our histo department, we used to rotate the clinical lead, and that used to take the sting out of it because everyone would realise what a difficult job it was, and it wasn't personal. I think the thing is, you have to have that separation. It isn't personal.
Yeah.
It's not you. It took me a very long time to really appreciate that. When people don't like a leader, it's not necessarily personal. Sometimes it's personal, but hardly ever. I got shouted at for 45 minutes when I first went into an imaging department. When I was appointed as clinical director, I went in to say hello, and somebody literally shouted at me for 45 minutes.
Goodness.
First time I'd ever, you know, hi, I'm Joe, I'm the new clinical director. You know, I don't expect you to be any good. The last 3 haven't been any good, and I don't expect you to be any better. So I'm like, oh
goodness.
Whoa. So you can't be friends with everyone. You can give everyone respect, and you can, I think the thing to do is remember that they're all human. Underneath it, sometimes it's hard to find it, but they're all human and they've all got their own stresses and tensions. You know, and mostly everybody's on the same side trying to do a difficult job in hard circumstances.
And yes, you never know what's going on behind the scenes on that particular day and things as well. Really.
Yeah. I mean, you will always need some support. You'll always need somebody to go, you know, not perhaps the details, but to download on, or to just ask, you know, what do I do? So having peer support is very helpful.
Another one, Joe, do you think you can be an effective leader in a department where you trained, where they will maybe always see you as a junior?
So I have done that. So probably no, but yeah, I think you can, because I think, you know, people see you, they may see you as a junior to start with, but as you grow, as you adapt, as you develop, you know, I've seen colleagues grow from trainee positions into extremely effective leadership positions, and I think you move with what that person is doing at the time. Yes, there may be a bit of, you know, oh, they're nothing but a jumped up whatever, but I think that's very uncommon now. So I think it can be done. Yeah,
that's good, thank you. And what message would you send to SPRs trying to make a difference in departments, being told that they can't or shouldn't as they are too junior?
I would say ignore it. I would say sometimes it's about what can you do on your own, and sometimes it's what can you do with allies, and are they actually stopping you from doing it, or are they just not helping you do it? So you can still make a difference on your own. You can still make things better on your own. You can do audits, you can do QI stuff. Very simpler. Juniority or seniority is not it doesn't matter. It's skill sets. Find allies. So find other people who will support you in what you want to do.
Thank you.
Coalition of the willing.
Absolutely. Do we accept leadership and management are not everyone's cup of tea? If so, why then we push every trainee to leadership and management courses? Should this not come from trainees themselves, and the system should enable such trainees?
Yeah, with you on that, but it's part of the GMC curriculum.
Mm.
So it's part of the GMC curriculum. I think it is because every consultant, every senior scientist, every consultant scientist uses an enormous amount of NHS resource and has a huge power to affect the functioning of a team.
Mm.
So I think some of those skills, some of those appreciations are pretty helpful.
Mm.
It's very difficult to find a leadership style, a leadership course, leadership information that suits you. And I know that what I'm doing tonight won't suit everyone, and I fully aware of that. But you will pick up nuggets that help you.
Mm.
We do spray and pray most of it, but some of it will stick and some of it will help, not all of it.
Thanks, Joe. And I think we better make this the last one. Hello, Joe and Matt. I would like to ask, how do you move past mistakes? How best to learn and leave it behind without it affecting your identity as a good leader?
Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes if you've hurt a patient through action or inaction, you can get a tachycardia. You can find it really distressing at a moral level, at a personal level. If you've done something that's upset someone, so inadvertently I've upset people by saying something a bit off the cuff to somebody who was not able to see that as me saying something off the cuff, and it hurt their feelings, and it does. But again, acknowledging it and trying to move on. It's not that you put it behind you, because you never forget it, but you still have to function, and you just hope that you never create the same mistake again.
And I think as you know, Joe, I've done a lot about errors and mistakes and things, and I think certainly talking about them with colleagues and peers is so effective. I certainly found that rather than bottling it all up inside and being ashamed and hiding it, actually being open about it and just admit it, you're saying, because it happens to absolutely everybody. We shouldn't be ashamed of that, but we can learn from it. We can all learn from those experiences, really.
Yeah, Jeremy Hunt made me go on we had to go on a safety tour, and he was taking various college presidents, and one of the things that you didn't discover afterwards, so we go around 6 trusts in a day to go and say, and he said, I want you to talk about some mistakes that you've made, and so you do this in front of whole trusts full of people, and you're like bearing your soul, going, but talking about it, you're absolutely right. And colleagues are very sympathetic because they've made mistakes too.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, I'm going to have to bring the session to an end, but thank you ever so much for a really interesting and thought-provoking talk. We've had so many questions come through, and I'm sorry we haven't been able to get through all of them. But thank you so much to all of you who have asked questions and for being part of our first session tonight. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you all again attending next week's session, which will be on follow the money, commissioning and financial flows. I'd like to say thank you again to Joe, and thank you very much to the college team as well for sorting out all the logistics of tonight. And I wish you all a very nice evening as well and a good week. Thank you all very much.